this song for ya.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here with two versions of this song that we're going to listen to today. We're going to focus first on the original single version, which would be the one that everybody knew for the longest time, and then we'll get into the other one, which is much longer. But this was a song, one of those situations where the record company says, hey, we need a hit single for this album, so go write one. Because that's how music and creativity work. It just makes me sad that people have that mentality. But I get that, to promote the record, you need to have something that's radio playable, that at least has some of those elements that you could release aside from the album and give people another reason to spend money on your band. So, long story short, I'm not going to get into it. It's pretty well known. This is basically a section of Ricky Nelson's song Summertime that Richie took and said, I really like this part. Let's turn it into something. And then we get Black Knight. To this day, I still don't really understand what the song is about. And that's okay, because it's just a fun song to listen to. It's really catchy. It's been a staple in their live set forever. And I say we just dig into the music, because that's what this show is all about. Here is Black Knight, the single version by Deep Purple. Very much sounding like the In Rock album. The bass drum is a little bit louder on this, which I think is really important. I think that really works for the song because there's a lot of bass drum and it kind of drives the rhythm a little bit more than it does in a lot of other songs because of the way he's playing it. So very important. It is flat and doesn't really have, I'm not hearing really a lot of reverb on the drums, which is fine. They sound good, but the bass drum is a little bit flat. Nice to hear Roger in the beginning there. Love the sound of his bass. I mean, this definitely feels like an in-rock session, but I love the mix on this. I think everything stands out very well. And it is, like I said, it is a very catchy riff.
Black night is not right. I don't feel so right. Don't care. Sit tight.
I do love a good shuffle. And that certainly helps this song move along very well. I love that, we're getting the note on the beat and then the note after the beat. And I mean, that's how a shuffle works. But for some reason, it feels a little more dominant here, maybe because it's just so heavy sounding overall. But just having that da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. I mean, it's kind of like when you have a song that's a gallop, like we talked about with Hard Lovin' Man. It just, those kind of riffs, which are very rhythmic, and not so much melodic. In fact, we're really not getting a lot of melody here. We're really just getting da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. So it's kind of a short gallop-like riff.
Baby, I'm lying on the way down the line that I'm free.
This is the kind of thing I think that Richie really shines at, is finding these little things to throw in between. And they make the song interesting. They make it feel like everything else isn't repetitive because, it's, the parts are very standard. They're really nice, but they're very standard and they're very repeatable. But you throw in some of these little flourishes, this little bit of color on top of it, especially when you don't have a lot of harmony. And it makes it feel like each part is very unique, even though the rhythm is the same.
Black night is a long way from home.
the other aspect of that, along with what Richie's doing, is drummers doing what drummers do. They always play something, different during the transitions. And that also keeps it a little bit interesting because it's not just the same fill. There are some songs where that is the case and the fill becomes part of that song. But especially if it's repeated on the repeat of the rhythm, they play a specific fill along with that. But here, we're getting very different fills, very colorful fills. The other thing that I've always found amazing about Ian Pace is even though he's only playing with one rack tom, two floor toms, a snare, and a kick, I feel like his kit is much bigger than that. And it's the combination of drums that he plays that make it sound interesting. Sometimes he'll hit a floor tom and a snare together. That creates a different sound, almost like it's a different drum, or he'll do the same thing with the rack tom or the other floor tom. And that creates a much bigger sounding kit. And I've always really admired how almost not quite melodic, but it just sounds like his kit has more tone variations than it does just because of that combination style.
Don't need a dark tree. I don't want a rough sea. I can't feel, I can't see.
Now they've added something on the snare beat and it sounds like it might be a clap. It's really dead and it's kind of hard to tell. It might be another sound, but similar to the way that you would do a clap if you were doing a clap in the studio. Typically that would be done on the snare beat to match the smack of the snare, that head hitting the forced air, hitting the bottom head and the strainer, giving it that snare sound. That's perfect to be accompanied with a clap. And so that might be what they're doing here, but it's so dead, it's kind of hard to tell. It might be that somebody's hitting something else.
Maybe a fire on the way down the line that I'm free, baby. Black night is a long way from home.
Okay, I'm going to go with it being a clap. And it's interesting because the first drum fill, the clapping stopped. The second drum fill, it kept going. And again, like those are little techniques that you can use. And it's not something that you would normally focus on. You wouldn't be paying attention to that. But when you notice it, or when you notice something is missing, you're like, wait a minute, why did something feel different there? And then you go back, it's like, oh, they didn't clap on that beat. And they had been clapping consistently. So when you take it away, it feels different. And I like that they didn't put it over the fill because it can change the fill. It's another percussive sound that's going to be played at the same time. So it can change the dynamic of a fill. And that might be why they omitted the clap there. What a killer solo from Richie. I've always really liked the way it starts off. It just kind of starts off on fire. Something you wouldn't expect. You're like, how exactly did he come to the conclusion that that's what he wanted to play? And I know that in general, with some exceptions, Richie generally does not plan his solos. So a lot of times when I'm listening to these, I just think that this is just what he felt and played in the moment or on that particular take. And they're like, yeah, I like that. That's good. Let's not re-record it. That solo is fire, absolute fire. And then when it comes back into the riff, now Roger is predominant in the bass is heavier. It feels like a different sound on the repeat of the main riff. And I really like that as we transition into the keyboard solo. Just has a more powerful punch to it when we're getting more bass. And as usual, not to be shown up by Richie, John Lord presents an amazing keyboard solo. I love that their styles are so different that they approach the song differently, but both solos work really well in the song. And I'm loving the sound of the organ here. It's just grit. we don't have a lot of decay in the notes. They're pretty cut off quick. So I don't know if he's using a damper pedal or, I've never played a Hammond, so I don't know what all the options are that are available. I imagine there's a damper feature available to it, but there's no, I'm not hearing any kind of reverb tail or anything. It's just the note and that's it. And that's part of what makes the sound of this so unique, really the whole album. We've talked about where there are those reverb washes and how they change the sound throughout in rock, but this is just a good gritty keyboard solo. And then something interesting is going on in the background, and I'm going to replay this part for you because Ian Pace hits a crash and then he hits another crash, but before there should be a crash, and it changes the feel of it, makes it a little more swing-like. Which, as we all know, Ian Pace was playing swing music. He grew up doing that. So, from the time he started playing drums anyway. So it's not surprising, but it's just interesting how it affects the rhythm of the song a little bit. So you're going to hear the first crash, that's on time, and then the second one comes in a bit early. And then, of course, the other crashes are on time after that. But that second crash being early, I like that. That's something that they actually would go on to do. I think when they're doing it live now, they do that beat a little bit early. I can't remember exactly where it's at, but it's now become part of the song where the whole band kind of shifts with that and accents that. And it does change the flow and the feel of the song. I think in a very positive way. I mean, for some, it is a bit repetitive rhythmically, so you want to do things that are going to change it up and make it more interesting. But I think it's in the last verse when they do that. And I remember there was like a video where I think it was Roger and Steve. They kind of like lift their guitars at the same time, right on that accent to kind of give like a visual accent on top of the audio accent. But it is cool, and I like that it was part of the original song. But I think when they're doing it live, it's a little more exaggerated. I'm noticing too that during the verses, the kick drum was very quiet, and I'm wondering if that was a playing technique or something happened in the mix. But obviously now the kick drum is back in full force. But if you go back and listen to the verses, it's almost like he's not playing the kick and just doing the shuffle between the hi-hat and the snare.
Black lights, that's on me. Black lights, I can't see. Dark lights, maybe I'll find on the way down the line that I'm free to be me. A black night is a long way from home.
I remember an interview with John Lord, and I can't remember where I heard it. It might have been, I'm not sure. It was one of the historical ones, kind of, I think, going through the chronology of Deep Purple. But he even mentioned that he had no idea what the song was about. And Roger had said in an interview that, when they sat down to do the lyrics, he's like, okay, what can we talk about? And Ian said, Black Night, not right, don't feel so bright. Like, okay, that rhymes. It's kind of where they left it. I mean, granted, there was a certain amount of alcohol involved at the time, and these things happen. But I've never really understood what the song is about. But again, maybe it's just because I'm not a huge lyrics guy that I really don't care, because it's fun to listen to the vocals. They're really enjoyable, regardless of what the words are. They're just enjoyable as an instrument to listen to, and especially in this song, he's not doing a lot of harmonics. The song is not a very harmonic song until you get to the riff that kind of goes into the chorus, I guess. But it's a pretty straightforward song for the most part. Now, that being a single version, of course, it was going to have a fairly fast fade out. Love what Richie's playing here. He's playing a lot of notes, but it doesn't feel like he's overplaying the song at all. And I think that's one of the things that I love about his playing is that you can do a lot of things and still serve the song, or you can play a lot of notes and just lose the song completely. And there are guitar players where I feel like they a lot of times will overplay a song and they kind of lose me. I disconnect from their playing, and I'm, a lot of shredders. That's why I don't like shred guitarists for the most part, is because that's what I get when I listen to them. It's about how fast can I play? How many notes can I play? What fancy techniques can I use instead of playing to serve the song? And I remember when Richie was doing his first live Q&A on Instagram, and I happened to get the notification. And so I jumped on and I'm listening to him answer questions. And I had asked him, I wrote in, and Candace was nice enough to submit my question to Richie. I said, I had worked in a band with David Stone. We did an album together with the band Era Patches. And I asked him what memories he had of David Stone, because he only worked with him on the Long Live Rock and Roll album and that tour. And, he immediately recalled David working with Symphonic Slam. And the most important thing I got out of that, except for the just immediate recall of somebody he hadn't worked with in over 30 years, was the fact that he said that David played for the song. And that was what he really liked about him. And I think, there's probably parts of things where Richie might go off the rails a little bit, but I also said this about Mick Box on almost like 99% of the songs that he had a solo in with Uriah Heep, is he knows how to play a solo that's within the context of the song. And there's a lot of notes that Richie's playing in that last solo there, but they fit the song to me. They don't go outside of the scope where I'm like, I feel like he's disconnected from the song. I feel very much like he's within the feel of it. And I have to say, as always, part of that could be a little bit nostalgia because I'm just used to hearing it that way. But as I'm listening with a more experienced musician's mind, an audio engineer's mind, a composer's mind, a performer's mind, I really feel like his playing fits, just like those little things that he throws in there. And he does them differently. When I've heard him do the song live, it's just kind of whatever he feels in the moment is what he throws in there. But he's in contact with the song. And I think that's the most important part. Now, this version of the song, the single version, was 3 minutes and 28 seconds long. Pretty good, for a single. Anywhere between 2.5 and 3.5 minutes. Pretty good for radio play. Now we're going to take a listen to the unedited Roger Glover mix, and this is 4 minutes and 47 seconds. Same recording. So my guess, and I haven't listened to this in a long time, so I don't remember much about it, but I'm going to guess that this takes it beyond where this song faded out. Well, right off the bat, this is a much better mix as far as clarity goes. I mean, the drums sound much bigger. We're hearing everything very clearly. There is a little bit of reverb on it that I wasn't hearing in the original version. So this feels a little more alive to me. I mean, obviously, we're losing a little bit of the character, I think, from the song as far as it being attached to the original recording. So nowadays, I don't feel like it's that way so much because everything... you can almost not even tell the difference between one album and another from a band. They go into the same studio. The EQ settings and all that are pretty much the same. The albums, like, you can't really tell a lot of times if an album or if a song belonged on the current album or if it came from the last album and was an unreleased track, because the sound is so consistent now. Back then, every album sounded incredibly different. So think about how Deep Purple, the third album, sounded versus Book of Taliesin versus Shades of Deep Purple, which we talked about. Now on In Rock, obviously the musical style has changed, but you're hearing here a big difference in the mix. We're hearing the clarity. and a little bit of reverb. And on the other one, it's a little bit muddier and darker. Like this still has a little bit of a low edge to it, but it doesn't feel as dark as the album version did. So we're losing a little bit of the character that connects it with the album, but we're also able to hear everything now. We're able to fully hear the performance. It feels a little bit more alive because we've got that just touch of reverb that it needed that I'm not hearing on the original. And as far as when I say it's a better mix, that really goes to just overall balance and clarity. I think the original mix was fine, and it's in context of the album and the time frame and all of that, and it works. But as far as if I wanted to learn from a version, if I wanted to understand what any of the members are playing, I would immediately go to this.
Black night, the spotlights don't feel so bright. Don't care to sit tight. Maybe I'll find on the way down the line that I'm free to be me.
See, in that little run from Roger Glover, did not hear that in the original version at all. So I'm really glad he remixed this. He did such a good job with those. I'm kind of bummed that he's not doing those anymore. We got everything through Who Do We Think We Are, which was great. Got some bonus tracks on some of those albums that, obviously we'll cover here on the podcast. And then he stopped. He didn't do Perfect Strangers. And it's kind of a shame. I really wonder what other treasures might be out there that we didn't get to hear because he wasn't able to go forward or chose not to go forward. I know a little bit of the backstory, which I'm not going to get into here because I'm not really about that on this show. I'm about the music, but it does lead, those kind of things do lead to the decision of doing a project or not doing a project, and considering the gems that we got, especially on Fireball. Until that anniversary edition came out, there were songs I didn't even know existed. So, I don't know if any of the newer albums had tracks that got left off that were recorded. I've not read anything about them, but anything that I do know of that is available will be covered on the podcast. So if any of you guys know of any tracks from Perfect Strangers going forward through, I would say Battle Rages On, let me know. Because the only one I have, I think, is just Son of Alaric, which was released on many albums or many different EPs and versions of Perfect Strangers. Or not, I think there was one. I think the picture disc I have has the full track of Son of Alaric on it, which seems kind of weird because that's a pretty long song. And anyway, so there you have it. But yeah, so it's really nice to be able to hear the clarity and hear what everyone's doing and really appreciate the effort that everyone's putting into the song. Another really important component of it that I do think got a little bit buried, I think you feel it more than you hear it, is the organ. During these parts especially, it really stands out during this particular riff. If you listen through more your right ear, you're hearing the gritty organ. If you listen through your left ear, you're hearing more guitar. And Roger got a great balance between the two here. But I feel like that got a little bit buried in the original version. So it's nice to hear this song in a more powerful presentation. So in the last version of the song we listened to, I mentioned that during the verse, it sounded like Ian Pace wasn't really hitting a bass drum. It was very quiet in the mix. And now I'm hearing it. It's like boom, boom, da, da, boom, boom, da, da. And that's an interesting way of playing the shuffle. I always played, you can use, there's so many different ways to play a shuffle. It doesn't seem like there would be, but there are. And, Uriah Heep played a lot of double shuffles, which is where you're playing the hat and the snare together. There's, different combinations of things you can do. There's the triple shuffle where you play the bass, the hat, and the snare together the whole time. So we're getting like kind of a swing feel, bass drum, snare, hi hat combination. So, ba boom, da da, ba boom, da da. It's got like a swing feel to it, which again kind of propels the song a little bit. I love that Roger jumps up an octave to play that there. It just sounds so much better. Having the variety of playing it low, then coming in and playing it high. And that's one of the things that I really love about his style is he does that a lot. And it adds such an interesting dynamic range to a song. Again, this is not a copy paste band. The riff might be repeated, but the way it's played is not. And that keeps it interesting. I feel like so many bands are just like, okay, here's how we play this. Let's play it that way. And Deep Purple seems to go, okay, that's how it goes. How are we going to play it this pass? And do it differently each time. Ooh, there's something I don't recall hearing before was that long extended chord. I really like that. I'm going to go back and play that again just as it's coming out of the solo, going back into the riff. That was really cool. I could be wrong, but it sounds like Ian Pace is adding in now another bass drum, so it's going ba boom ba tap ba boom ba tap instead of ba boom ta tap ba boom ta tap, and that again changes the feel of the song. It changes the dynamics. It changes the way the other instruments sound. It's a nice progression too, and he's playing. He's adding as he goes. Yeah, I like that we're getting a little more clarity in the vocals too. I mean, you could certainly understand everything he was saying. There wasn't a problem with that. But it is nice to have a little bit more crispness in the vocals, just a little more on the high end EQ to give it a little bit of extra clarity. Now, I don't normally interrupt solos, but we've still got another minute to go in this song. And I mean, obviously, everything we've heard was what we heard in the original song, just sounding better. But now we've extended beyond where the original song ended. So all the extra stuff, that whole extra, minute plus that we're getting is the extended song. And this is what I love. I love to know where songs that I kind of want to chase the tail, where it fades out. I want to follow that party. I want to still be in the room and know what happened after that. I mean, sometimes it's like seconds difference. But sometimes, like here, you have an extended jam, and because the record company is releasing it as a single, they're not going to release, an almost 5 minute song to the radio station. We've got the song, we're going to cut down the solo. That'll get people interested in wanting to hear it. And then Roger came in and said, you know what, though? There's stuff we did after that I think is good. And I want people to be able to hear it. So he's given us that here. And I really love that. The playing, we've not lost any energy. We haven't lost any rhythm. This is still just as much on fire as it was where the fade ended on the original single version. Was that amazing or what? I mean, you get Ian Pace just kind of like, okay, we've got our take. Now I'm just going to go off. And he's still keeping the rhythm, but he's adding so much to it at the end, giving us, twice the power. We've got John Lord just kind of going nuts on the organ, and Rogers just keeping the whole thing solid. And then Richie just playing his heart out. I mean, this is killer stuff. And the fact that we didn't get this in the original time frame is a shame. I absolutely understand why it was faded where it was. That makes sense. That's how radio works. If you're looking at a 5 minute song, that's 1/12 of an hour. That's a lot of real estate in radio time. That's, it's going to be a lot harder for a DJ to play you at a 5 minute song versus a 3.5 minute song. So I understand absolutely why things were done that way, and that's fine. But the fact that we had to wait all this time to get this version of it's just a shame it wasn't released on some other, extended plays or, extended best of or something like that. But I'm very grateful that Roger went back and gave us the ability to hear this, because there was some really good playing there. And it's also like, all right, we know we've got the song. Now we can relax and just have fun. That's what it feels like to me. I don't know if there was a signal where somebody's like, okay, anytime you guys want to wrap it up is fine. And they're like, we're having fun. We're just going to keep playing for a minute. I don't know how it all came about. I don't know how they decided when to actually stop, but it does feel like there was a certain point where they knew they had what they needed, and now they could just have fun with it. And it feels like that last minute plus that we get in this extended, the full version, I should say. I don't want to call it extended because it's the actual recording. But I feel like it's relaxed and unleashed and in the moment, and just, they're just playing and having fun and doing what musicians do. And really big fan of that. So thank you, Roger, for giving us that. That is absolutely fantastic. And for us, guys, that will wrap it up as far as the song goes. I want to just take a moment to thank my patrons, Corey Morissette and William Rose. Thank you guys very much for your support of the show. Thank you to everyone who has liked and shared and commented on the episodes, whether it be on any of the social media posts or the YouTube video or anything like that. If you guys are wondering, the YouTube video is really just the audio, but I have to put it into a video format to upload it to YouTube. I'm actually getting a lot of attention there on some of the episodes, so I'm really glad I'm doing that. It's worth the extra time to take and render out a video. It's not me, and it is limited in some countries. So if you're unable to get the YouTube feed from my YouTube channel, it may be because the limited view is, hitting your country. Very possible. I don't think I have access to a list of countries where it's blocked, but I just know that it just says blocked in some countries. So that being the case, obviously there's plenty of places to listen to, and you should know because you're listening to this right now. And thank you guys for taking the time to listen to it. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you in the next episode. Another bonus track from In Rock. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.